The following production is brought to you by the Talkin' Buds Leaf Show.
Here we go. Talkin' Buds Leaf Show, episode 266. We have arrived at the Four Nations 2-week break in the season. Be honest with me here. Some of these guys that are going to play in this tournament, you got to think that some of them are looking at their teammates getting ready to go sit in Cancun for a week and are like, oh, that sounds nice. Like, do you think any of these guys going to this tournament, as much as I'm looking forward to watching it, we're going to cover it, all that stuff, do you think any of these guys going to this tournament in the back of their mind are a little like, oh my God, 2 weeks off in Cancun sounds pretty nice? Or do you think they're all heroes and are all like, no, I'm going to go play for my country?
I actually have no idea. I think you would probably make like a passing joke about it, even if you did care about it. But I think if you're like a star player in this league, I think you're excited for the ability to like prove it on another stage.
Yeah.
I don't think Connor McDavid is like worried about going to Cancun at all. I think he's actually so ready to make his statement as one of the greatest Canadian hockey players of all time. I honestly 100% believe that.
Well, and Sid's a game time decision. Like, we don't know if Sid's going to play now, and they put the C on him and everything. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. But I just, with this tournament specifically, like I said, I'm looking forward to watching it. We're going to cover it, all that stuff. But this tournament, it's not real. It's like a manufactured NHL gimmick. It'd be like, it's not the Olympics. Like, if I wouldn't be asking you this question if they were going to the Olympics, because they'd be like, no, it's the fucking Olympics. I'm going to the Olympics. But like some manufactured NHL gimmick tournament that in the grand scheme of things means absolutely nothing. Like, I'm sure there's some of these guys that are looking at their teammates being like, well, taking the fam to Cancun for a week, and are like, oh, fuck, that sounds nice.
I've been thinking that all year. This tournament, I don't want to undermine it because we're going to be covering it and we're going to be excited about it or whatever, but it is a fake tournament.
Yeah, it is. It is.
This is just like next year at this time is going to be so exciting.
Yes.
It's going to be the greatest thing of all time because of
the stakes are so much higher.
Yeah, the stakes are high. It's the broadcast feels different. The rink feels different. It's just like and this is just it's fake.
It's a gimmick.
But that being said, if Canada and USA go and have a banger on Saturday night, like people are going to be loving it.
Yes, yeah, it's going to be electric.
Yeah.
Ryan, you know what was not a banger? Saturday night in Vancouver. That was not a banger. A disappointing end to an otherwise really good road trip, like a road trip that I think we as Leaf fans and the team can come away pretty happy with. But yeah, I don't know what it is. Dude, they can't beat. I said this last week. Add the Vancouver Canucks to the list of teams that they just can't beat. It doesn't matter. What'd they say? They said on the broadcast last night they haven't won in Vancouver since like 2019 or something like that. Like they don't
0-8 and they're 18 of their last 20.
Yeah, like they just cannot. Something about being in that building, they just cannot win.
Well, it's also always the end of the road trip.
Yeah,
I didn't hear anybody mention that. That's a long road trip. It's their longest road trip of the year, and that's always the last stop. So you have a successful road trip, which I think everybody after the game had that attitude where it's we wanted to win this game, but we just had a fantastic road trip after coming off a bad stretch of hockey. So, I mean, that's something when you're on the road for that long and then you're ending in Vancouver and you've already had a good road trip. I don't really blame them, and they're all going to Cancun like we just talked about a couple of minutes ago.
Yeah,
so the human condition's going to kick in, and you're just going to not care as much. I would I know I would fall into that trap.
How many of those guys are getting on the birds straight from Vancouver and just going to sit on the beach? Like, they're not even going home. They've probably made arrangements. Maybe the wife's meeting them down there, the girlfriend, the family, whatever. They're just like, let's just hit the final buzzer here so I can just be wheels up on my way to the all-inclusive.
Well, those guys live, I don't know what they're doing because they're living a whole different lifestyle. I'm sitting in my condo in Toronto on a Sunday doing the show. I don't know what their routine is, but I'm sure it's fucking awesome.
You're sitting waiting to watch the Super Bowl later.
Yeah, I'm waiting to have people over here to make a mess and watch the Super Bowl.
So, takeaways from the road trip overall, pretty good. A few of them that I have listed out here. First, I want to start with Morgan Rielly, just because I have been very critical of Morgan Rielly all season. A lot of people have, but I have been very vocal. Like, I don't think he's been very good pretty much all year. And then it's reported that him and Berube have a little heart-to-heart. And after that, it just seems like he's kind of thrown caution to the wind and is just playing. Like, he doesn't look like he's thinking as much. He's just going out there and playing. And I thought he looked way, way better in these 4 games than he has all year.
Well, if all it took was a conversation, what took so long to have this conversation? Because it looks like he's just, the word free is the right word. He just looks a lot more free out there. He's starting to create more opportunities. He looks less exposed in his own end. This conversation definitely did have an impact on this trip because he was throwing pucks at the net. He was just, everything just looked more efficient in his game.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's like, why do we wait so long? And I think this might be something that a criticism we might have as we go on in the Berube tenure here. Same thing that every week I'm banging my fist on the table about switching up line combinations. But maybe Berube's thought is, you're a professional. I'm going to let you sort your way out of this. And then when it gets to the point where it's not happening, then he sort of inserts himself and is like, no, I need to talk to you because we're 3/4 of the way through the season and we're just now having this conversation with Morgan Rielly and it clearly unlocked something.
I mean, we're 55 games into the season. It seems like a lot of hockey's been played, but think about how fast it's gone by. Like the fact that we're already in mid-February. Just picture him. It's his first year on the job. And I was criticizing his systems last week, but it's hard to imagine just the process of becoming a new coach of a new team and just trying to find the right buttons to push with every single individual. It would take a little bit more time to kind of, I don't know the right word, to find different ways to get different guys motivated or implement different things. So, I mean, it seems like it took a long time for that conversation to happen, but in the grand scheme of things, this season's flown by, and you're right. It's probably, he's professional. I'm going to let him figure it out, but it got to a point where he started getting criticized in the media, and I'm sure it started to kind of waver on him a bit, and a conversation needed to be had.
Storyline number 2 from the road trip, the return of Anthony Stolarz. And he picked up right where he left off. We talked about this for weeks about he could come back. He could be a step behind. It's really hard, especially for a goalie, all that stuff. He inserted himself in Seattle and looked exactly like the save percentage leader that he was when he left with the injury. You texted me in the middle of the night and you said Anthony Stolarz is the number 1 goalie, which is a pretty bold statement considering how well Joe Woll has played down the stretch here. I'm going to let you explain that text, but with the preface of saying I agree.
Yeah, I mean, that you took it right out of my mouth. I was going to do a dramatic hot take here, but you just watch him in net and he just has a presence.
Yes.
I don't know if it's his size. I don't know if the Leafs have just never had a goalie of his stature, but when he's in net, it just feels a little bit different. I think Joseph Woll has played extremely well. His stats are not off the charts, but he's made some absolutely incredible saves at very key moments, which is things we've been asking for years in big time games. But I want Anthony Stolarz comes back, and it's a hot take after playing 1 game, and they're playing Seattle, and with all due respect to Seattle, they're not the Florida Panthers.
No.
Yeah. But it's just, there's something about his presence in the net, and it just comes across even through my TV screen. And I think just where he's at in his career, He's 31 years old. He's had a couple stops. He's been injured. He's kind of seen the league. He's been a backup. He's had a taste of starting. I just think maybe in also the maturity level of
that's the word I was going to use. Yes.
It's like the right time for this guy. And I don't want to, I'm not crapping on Wall at all. And I hope Joseph Wall is a part of this organization and keeps playing well. But I just think there's just something about him being a backup in Florida, seeing what it took, being behind Bobrovsky, having so many different challenges in his career to finally get to the destination where he is like a number one goalie. I just think that story just makes most sense for him, why I think he's the number one guy. And also he's just a fucking animal in there. He makes so many good saves.
Yeah, you took the word out of my mouth there with maturity. To me, you talked about his sort of journey through his career. It seems like he recognizes that and he sees the opportunity he has in front of him here. He's like, I can become the starting goalie and the number one goalie for the Toronto Maple Leafs and cement my legacy. It's like, yeah, he won a cup in Florida. He was a backup. They still won a cup, not taking anything away from that. But this is an opportunity for him to like take his career in a place where maybe before this, it wasn't necessarily headed in that direction. He was kind of headed in more of like a career backup direction. But I agree. There's just the presence. He has a presence about him that it honestly reminds me of Freddie Anderson when Freddie was at his best. Just this ability to calm everything down. And that is such an important personality trait for a goalie. It's, in my opinion, it's the most important personality trait for a goalie.
Well, who's going to run in the comments and give us a chirp about how many games Anthony Stolarz has started in a season? Because I actually just looked. Joseph Wall this year has already started more games in a regular season than Anthony Stolarz ever has.
Yep. And the one thing that you can't argue with people is the injury. You know, that's something we talk about with Joe Wall all the time, but Stolarz can't stay healthy. He's had knee issues throughout his whole career.
Listen, this could be, I'm not trying to be a hero with this hot take, but I just think what we just laid out, and you can't deny what you've seen in the net with him like back there. He just looks like such a weapon back there. It just seems like he's just going to be there and make the big save and just not going to let a bad goal. And I could be wrong at the end of the day because Joseph Wall came in last year in the playoffs and played pretty well and got them back in that series. And I do think he's a very good goalie, but I don't know. I'm just kind of leaning towards more Stolarz at this point.
Third observation from the road trip. Craig Berube switches up the top two lines. Max Domi gets up after the Marner injury. Max Domi gets up and gets to play on the wing with Nyes and Matthews. Then we have the super second line of Tavares, Nylander, and Marner. I want to start with that line. Saw a lot of people on the socials, especially in the Vancouver game. Part of me wants to treat the Vancouver game with a grain of salt, like we talked off the top. These guys are all mentally checked out at that point. But Nylander and Marner is an interesting combination. You texted me this week. You're like, I don't think those guys have ever started a game together. And off the top, you're kind of like, is this a fit? And from what I've seen, not necessarily. I think they're two guys that both want the puck, which is why I think sometimes it makes more sense to have, like, I think Nylander gets the shit end of the stick a lot and he gets put down on the third line. And I think a huge reason for that when they separate Matthews and Marner, why that happens is because they're just really similar. Like only one person can have the puck and both of those guys in your mind, you're kind of like, oh, well, that's okay. But Marner will take it and he'll set Nylander up, but that's not how it works. William Nylander wants to take it at the red line and get a breakaway.
Yeah, it makes no sense. Mitch Marner is put with Auston Matthews, and it's kind of assumed by how people talk about Mitch Marner that Auston Matthews can't really like create his own offense with speed. It's just Mitchie's always setting him up. Mitchie's always looking for him. And you watch William Nylander play this season and last season, this guy needs nobody to get him the puck. He's taking the puck from his own zone and he's skating it through the entire neutral zone and creating an opportunity for himself, or he's cheating for offense and finding a way to get 2 breakaways a game. I think William Nylander, I think Tavares is a good fit for Nylander. And it wasn't like this in the past, because you remember when they played together in the past and it just
Oh yeah, you and I have been on here for weeks being like weeks in previous seasons being like, oh, these guys don't fit.
But I think Tavares has kind of found a different style and a different way he could play with Nylander to be effective, because they have been really good this year. And it's because just let 88 take the puck and just get the hell out of the way and get in the right position for a rebound, get in the right position to fill a hole, fill a gap. Like, Nylander is just going to do it himself at this point. So I don't really, I mean, it was an interesting, fun little combination, but it was, to me, in my head, it was never a long-term solution. It was just a different look for just a different look during a regular season. Our favorite conversation, lines, combinations. It was just a different look. And I just knew it was only a matter of time before it got split up.
Domi looked good with Matthews in Calgary. And as it kind of wore on, it became a little less effective. I still don't think you should abandon it and go away from it. I sent you a clip this week from Kipper and Bourne with Justin Bourne breaking down the points that Matthews and Marner get when they're with each other versus when they're not. And it was just as simple as, like, Cole's Notes version is Matthews is a way better puck distributor and acts more like an actual NHL centerman when Mitch Marner is not on his line. And Mitch Marner, something that you are banging your fist about all the time, shoots way more and is way more of a scoring threat when he's not with Auston Matthews. To me, the proof is in the pudding. These two guys, I do not like the impact they have on one another. I know there's so many people who did, like, we'll have somebody in the comments yelling at me about that, but I'm sorry. They defer to each other way too much. They kind of go, sometimes when you watch them when they're together, it looks like they're playing a game out there that no one else is playing, and they're easy to shut down. All you got to do is put them on the periphery. It's just, to me, it's over, man. Like the best version of this team is the wealth spread out. And that doesn't mean at certain times you can't load up a line. You can't start everyone in the O-zone to try and score a goal. That's all well and good. But from a shift-to-shift basis, I don't care what these two guys and their egos say and all the whining they probably do behind the scenes of how they want to play together. Enough. Keep them separate. If Max Domi is going to be here and they're not going to look to move him out at the deadline or something, the best version of him is playing with Auston Matthews. Keep it together. Let them figure it out. Auston Matthews, at this point in time, is the highest paid player in the league. He does not need Mitch Marner holding his fucking hand. He can drive his own line.
Yeah, I mean, you've been banging this point home all year, and I think you're right. It's just 60 minutes of Mitch Marner trying to make the greatest pass of all time to set up Auston Matthews. That's basically that's what happens throughout the course of a game when those two guys play together. It's just, they might have the right idea to forecheck or play a different system, but as the game wears on, it's just Mitch Marner trying to make the greatest pass of all time to Auston Matthews. That's yes. All it is when those two guys play together.
Okay, we're going to move on now and do what I don't love doing, which is dealing in hypotheticals. But you've been very vocal in your desire for the Leafs to improve their blue line. A lot of people, myself included, have like, nope, they need another center. They need the help up front. I'm tired of watching Pontus Holmberg. But you're like, wouldn't it be great if they could go get an impact blue liner? And then this week, they're linked to Noah Dobson of the New York Islanders, who it's been reported that Lou is open to moving off. I think the Islanders are in a place where they're looking to sell a little bit. They know they're not a cup contending team this year. This guy's got a $4 million cap hit. If you look at his numbers last year, they're pretty impressive. Again, we're going to preface this by saying you and I aren't like, we don't watch every Noah Dobson shift. We're not going to sit here and be like, pretend like we know everything about the guy. But I mean, if you look from a point production perspective alone, and a blue line, that a huge storyline throughout the season has been this blue line doesn't produce enough offense. It's intriguing, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you see a guy who was taken in the first somewhat high first round pick a couple of years ago, a guy who you look up his stats, he had 70 points last year in 79 games. That's obviously, for a team that cannot produce anything from the back end offensively, that is intriguing. I do need an Islanders fan to enter the comments and tell me if this guy's a liability defensively, because I don't take it enough New York Islanders hockey to 100% know if he's just a pure offensive guy or if he's a good all-around guy. But I really do think that you need to be knocking on the door of guys like Noah Dobson. If there's any team that has a top defenseman and a guy who especially can produce points, because in a perfect world, I would love an all-around guy. I would love a guy who could produce points and also be that number one guy who plays 30 minutes a night and shuts down top pairings. But again, there's only so many of those guys in the league. So if you can just upgrade on a guy who can eat a bunch of minutes, or upgrade on a guy who can improve your power play, improve your point production, can skate, I think you really have to start knocking on the doors of any top defenseman that is available in the deadline.
Okay, so here's where I wanted to go with this. They're going to have to move some money out. What if the ask from Lou is a Bobby McMahon? No. Because we come up with all these like fantasy deals about like, oh, let's trade Easton Cowan and Nick Robertson. Let's trade Easton Cowan and Max Domi. Let's trade and like who, if you're on the other end of the phone, you're like, okay, that's great. Like Nick Robertson is unproven. Nick Robertson is setting the NHL record for falling down. Like, why am I going to like that's not enticing? So if you're Lou and you're on the other end of the phone and you're like, hey, I'll give you this impact blue liner, but you're going to give me your best depth scoring forward in Bobby McMahon, who is on. Kiprios said this earlier this week, and I laughed at it when I was driving home from work, that like Bobby McMahon and his agent might be kicking themselves a little bit for signing that extension in the offseason, when it's like he's having a career year and probably could have got some more money. So if you're an opposing GM, here's a guy who's proven that he's a value depth scorer who's on a really good contract. So I would not be surprised if you want to get something, you got to give something. And I could see teams circling like, give me Easton Cowan and give me Matthew Nyes, give me Bobby McMahon, give me like an impact forward of yours. Your thoughts on potentially moving out of Bobby McMahon?
Yeah, this is where all these trade discussions get really challenging, because I just don't think they can subtract a Bobby McMahon right now. I really don't. And honestly, I don't know enough about Noah Dobson. I know we're a Leaf show. We want to give good takes, but I haven't seen this guy play enough hockey to really 100% know if he's what I'm looking for. He's just a guy who was taken in the first round a couple of years ago, who got everybody excited that Lou potentially might be shopping him. I haven't really done my due diligence yet, but it's just, you look at McMahon, like Nyes is absolutely off the table. Like there is just, unless you're getting Roman Yossi or like
Zach
or just
Werenski.
Devon Tate, like, okay, like fine. But for a guy who, I mean, no one is screaming Noah Dobson's name on a nightly basis. So it's just like Nyes, no. McMahon, it's just, how can you subtract? He's arguably the most important player in terms of just having the ability to score a goal at a critical moment when
outside
the top
the
guys.
core four.
It's such an important role, and I thought it was so stupid how this guy was a healthy scratch at the start of the year, and I'm so happy he's just gotten his chance to play every single night and prove that he could score 30 plus goals in this league, because I know he can. They showed last night he's played 76 games in his career in the NHL. He scored 30 goals. So he's proven so far in his career that if he plays a full 82, he's capable of scoring 30 plus, and that's worth $5+ million in this league. So, I mean, Easton Cowan right now is the ultimate trade chip, because you just haven't seen him. You haven't seen him do it at the NHL level yet. I know his amazing consecutive point streak just ended in the OHL, and I know it's having a player that is highly touted like him is very exciting, but at this point, if you're going to make an impact play, like he and a first round pick is really what you have to offer. Yes. That's your package. You have Easton Cowan and you have your another first round pick to go get a difference maker. That's the package to me.
And I think you got to convince them to take a roster player too, because you need the money. That's also part of the issue. I think it's so funny how everyone when a deal comes up are like, Nick Robertson. Here you go.
No one wants Nick Robertson. Should have traded Nick Robertson 3 years ago.
I know.
And this is a warning sign with a guy like Easton Cowan, because do I think Easton Cowan, by all scouting that I've taken in by anyone who's seen him play, it seems like he would be on a higher trajectory than Nick Robertson. But Nick Robertson also lit it up in the O and came here and just doesn't really have all the tools to be a impact NHLer. So it is a warning sign that Easton Cowan is kind of a smaller dude. He could not translate the way everyone thinks that he might. So if you're going to try and get an impact player, you might have to make the tough decision of moving off him before he comes up and proves that he's not worth what he was 3 years ago, like what Nick Robertson is right now.
Yes, and you got to get a team that's like looking to maybe start a rebuild or start kind of a reset to get them to believe that Easton Cowan could be like a centerpiece of their upcoming rebuild. Another name the Leafs have been linked to is Philadelphia Flyers' Scott Laughton. This is a bit of a different discussion from Noah Dobson because I don't think you'd be moving out like high-end assets to get him. A lot of people I saw online, this is very polarizing because people are like, this guy is like nothing flashy. Like, why? Like, this is kind of an underwhelming addition. But to me, the thing that intrigues me about Scott Laughton, and again, Ryan and I always preface, we have not sat and watched hours and hours of Scott Laughton tape, but it's a guy who's a veteran center in the league, and it's just, you cannot continue with Pontus Holmberg centering a fucking line. Like at the end of the day, if you can get a guy that has NHL pedigree and experience to add depth down the middle, because Minton's not ready and Holmberg is no good. So and Domi is not a center. So you're kind of sitting here and you've had that spot circled. And so to me, am I going to give up a shitload of assets to get a Scott Laughton? Not necessarily. However, to me, that's the type of player that I think seems a lot more realistic because it's not a huge name, but it's a veteran with NHL pedigree who adds experience and depth to your center ice position. And that to me is you just cannot go into the playoffs with fucking Pontus Holmberg centering your third line. You absolutely cannot have it. You can't.
Well, I mean, if you look at Noah Dobson, he's a like, that's a rental. Like that's a full-on rental situation. Scott Laughton is another year after this year. So there's the list of centermen that could potentially be available at the deadline is I think it's pretty deep compared to years past. There are some names on there that I think would fit and replace Pontus Holmberg pretty easily. I don't think it would be a very tough job to bring one of these guys in and get more production than what you're getting from Pontus Holmberg, even though he's the GOAT at drawing penalties, apparently. But yeah, I just think Scott, like, I'm not watching every single Scott Laughton game. I just know that there's a lot of centermen that would be an upgrade on Pontus Holmberg. So if Scott Laughton's their guy, then go get him. If whoever's on the list is their guy, go get him, because they're looking for something specific. It also depends on what you're going to give up. So I think they just have to make a decision on who's going to be their guy, and they're going to have to pursue them and come up with a package that's going to work for both sides. They also reported this week that the Blues are open to potentially moving off Braden Shen for the right package. Like, there's an intriguing name. That would be a steep price.
Yes. Yeah. There's an intriguing name. So I agree. Yeah. I think centers, the Noah Dobson is so interesting because defensemen aren't necessarily available, guys who can make a difference. And to your point that you just made, there are a few center options. So you got to True Living's going to have to make a call here where it's like, do we just go and do we target a Scott Laughton where we don't have to pay a steep price and bring in kind of a depth piece to add, or do we take a swing and go and try and get a guy who could really impact our team and push us to the next level? A Noah Dobson, a Braden Shen, like those kinds of names. And you look at it, and I can make arguments for both ways. I'm like, on the one hand, I've said for weeks, like, go all in. You've got the goaltending this year. The division's weak. Like, I watched the Bruins, a little bit of the Bruins and Golden Knights yesterday before the Leaf game started. It's like the Bruins are cooked, man. Like, they're not the same team they once were.
Minus 25 goal differential. Like they're done,
like they are.
man.
That is not Boston Bruin hockey. Like, so
finished.
They're cooked. Like,
good riddance.
But then there's the other part of it where it's like, you talked about this last week, the salary cap going up. It's like, well, you're going to have a ton of room to play with. There's going to be teams in this league that can't necessarily afford. For the first time with the cap jumping up like this, the Leafs are going to have an advantage with their financial situation where they're going to be one of these teams that is at the ceiling every year. So do you just go, this is kind of a game changer, the fact that the cap's going up? Maybe we stand pat and kind of roll with that. I don't know. But you can make arguments either way for what they should do.
I mean, the only thing that sketches me out about this cap going up situation is just all the guys who are making all the money are just going to want more money. And I see the article this week that Mitch Marner and his agent are looking for a cap percentage. And it's like,
I know.
Are you fucking joking me right now? This guy should sign for the exact same. Say they are going to re-sign them and say that he needs a big deal and they're going to give it. This guy needs to sign a contract that is $1 beneath Auston Matthews or right at that number, because I don't want to hear this crap about percentage of the cap.
I know.
It's horse shit. It's just,
it is.
And you look
he's getting minimum $12 million. I'm done with the Marner discourse. I'm not engaging in it anymore. The second you saw the cap was going up, he's getting minimum $12.5 million. Minimum. So it's over. It's over.
It is what it is. But if you also look at their roster, you look around the league, you look in the division, obviously Florida is to me the best team in the division still, and I still think they would have a very hard time outing them in a playoff series. I really do. But if you look at the roster, and I think the case for kind of making a big move is there, because like you said earlier, if Bobby McMahon's agent just waited a little bit longer, he would have had a bigger deal. But right now he's at $1.3 million for this year and next season. Like that's a key cog who is making a extremely affordable salary, playing incredible hockey. You have Matthew Nyes on his last year on his entry-level deal. You have Anthony Stolarz at 2.5 for this season and next season. And you have Joe Wall is still making $700,000 this year. So there are little pieces that are having, even though they're right up against the cap anyway. So it's not that makes a difference, but I don't know. I think waiting too long, like, it's just like, do we really want to, it's just like impatience. We really want to kick the can down the road again. And maybe they do go all in and they still go in the first round and lose anyway. So it's just,
I hate to tell you this, buddy. I hate to tell you this, buddy. They're playing the Ottawa Senators in the first round. Like, that's happening. Everyone get your heads around it. Whether it's the 2-3 matchup or it's they win the division and they play a wild card team, they're playing the Ottawa Senators in the first round.
I think they're going to play the Tampa Bay Lightning in the first round again.
Well, who would have thought, if you said to us 3 years ago that our ideal first round opponent, I don't like playing this game because I'm of the belief this team can fucking lose to anybody. They proved that when they played the Montreal Canadiens in the first round.
Buffalo Sabres in the first round.
Yes. So I'm not sitting here saying, like, I hate talking like this, but if you could give me an ideal first round opponent, if you told me I had to pick, it would either be the Tampa Bay Lightning or the Detroit Red Wings. I like their chances against both of those teams. I have nightmares about a first round matchup against the Ottawa Senators. I have nightmares about it every night.
Yeah.
But or some team from the Metro.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think I think Tampa is, I mean, I've kind of looked at it, like, they're plus 42 differential. I know they've had a weird season, but they're humming along. They're still a good team. Yeah. Detroit, ever since Todd McLellan's taken over, they're a point behind. Yeah, they're a point behind Ottawa now with a game in hand. So they've kind of woken up. I agree. I think if somehow they end up like the Detroit Red Wings, I think that would be the ultimate first round matchup for them to finally get over that hump.
Yes,
because even Tampa, it's like they've played well against Tampa, but like these guys have all won before. These guys they can turn it on, man.
Oh yeah, dude, I've said that. That's my take. Like this team can lose to anyone. Don't underestimate who this team can lose to. Like they can lose. Like anyone who goes into any playoff matchup with even a shred of arrogance, I cannot stand. It's like we all watched that series against the Montreal Canadiens 3 years ago, whatever it was. They can lose to anyone. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm just kind of looking down the standings. Like if they play the Ottawa Senators, they would lose that series.
Yes, they would. Ryan, I hate that matchup. If they play the Ottawa Senators in the first round, you're going to have to counsel me in the lead up to that series. I'm going to be I'm going to be on pins and needles watching because I grew up in the era where the Leafs dunked on the Senators. That was my youth, watching Matt Sundin. It didn't matter where they finished. They'd always play. And you'd go into the series and it'd be like, oh, the Senators are favorite. The Senators are a cup contender. And the Leafs, like those one year the Leafs swept them. They always own the Senators. But this version of the Maple Leafs with these star players who like to go and completely disappear in big playoff games against an Ottawa team that'll be giving it their all, that is led by Brady Tkachuk with Linus Ullmark in the net. Oh my God, it's nightmare fuel for me. Nightmare fuel.
I mean, do they beat the Columbus Blue Jackets in a 7-game series?
I don't think so. My wife and I talk all the time about our son, and like I have a list. I'm gonna let him do whatever he wants. He can cheer for whatever team he wants. There's a short list of teams that we will not be permitted to cheer for in this house. The Ottawa Senators are on that list.
Yeah.
Absolutely not will you be an Ottawa Senator fan. No way. Like I do not have Leafs and Habs to me. If anything is cool. Like I'm like, this is cool. These are two historic teams. I grew up in the era with the Sens. Absolutely not with the Ottawa Senators.
Well, would they beat that? To me, they could not beat the Senators in a playoff series. I would be even nervous playing the Blue Jackets in a series. If they played Boston, I would not be confident because they just can't beat Boston. If somehow the New York Rangers slid back in and if they played the New York Rangers, I would not feel confident about that series at all. Even if they played the Montreal Canadiens basically any team in their division other than the Detroit Red Wings, which I'm disrespecting them. Watch they'll play and they'll beat them in the first round. But like you look down the list of the standings and it's like, even though they're a good team and they're going to maybe win the division or they make the playoffs every year, I just don't feel confident against anybody. I really don't.
Yep. All right. Well, that's a positive note to end this last podcast on. 4 Nations. Let's talk a little 4 Nations scheduling. Ryan and I will be doing post-game shows after each Canada game. The first game is this coming Wednesday against Sweden. We'll be doing an episode immediately following that game. So that'll be one of the ones where it's up in the middle of the night and you can listen to it the next day. Saturday, they play Team USA in a game that everyone has circled. It'll be epic. We'll be back our usual Sunday time slot for a post-game show there. And then they play Finland the following Monday, which is a holiday here in Canada. It's the Family Day holiday. So we'll be back some point after that to do that game. And should they go to the finals, it'll be another post-game there. I'm looking forward to this. We kind of joked about the tournament off the top, but it's something different. It's just we're covering a team that has Cale Makar on their blue line. That's something to look forward to, if you ask me.
I would put down a serious bet that Canada is not winning this tournament.
Interesting.
I mean, my original thought was this has Finland and Sweden written all over it because those are two teams that you can't sneeze at. Like there's top players on both those teams, but or it's the US dominates and it just sets up the Olympics and how Canada needs to. Okay, so if Canada goes out, they stink, and the US go out and they dominate and they win, just the lead up to the Olympics and how they need to structure their roster. They're gonna build a roster based on everything that they saw from the US, and it's all gonna be about having the intangibles and. I could just see it happening.
Hey, Ryan, listen.
Like the 06 Olympics.
Hey, Ryan, you said it, and I completely agree with you. All you got to do is stick your best checking centerman on Team USA's captain, and you won't see him for the whole game. He'll completely disappear.
Yeah.
It's a shame that Joel. Yeah, it's a shame that Joel Eriksson-Ek is not on the Team Canada roster. You put him against the captain of Team USA, you won't see him. He'll be invisible.
Well, they should have just had Jordan Staal on Team Canada for that reason, because every single time Austin Matthews plays Jordan Staal, he's useless.
Yes, I know.
Or call Phil Deneau. Get Phil Deneau.
Drew Doughty gets the call to join Team Canada.
Yeah, I'm a
veteran guy. Yeah, big fan of that.
Yeah, big fan of that.
Another beauty to add to the room.
Yeah, another him and Crosby, the only two guys left from.
I know. Isn't that insane?
Yeah.
It's insane.
Their roster. Oh my god.
All right.
That 2014 roster
is the greatest hockey team ever assembled.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna get out of here. Join us this week and hopefully next week for coverage of the Four Nations. Hit that like and subscribe button below, and then before you know it, we'll be back, and it's the home stretch for the Leafs. If you're listening to the audio version, please do the same.
Spread the word. Tell your friends.
We really appreciate it. We will see you guys on Wednesday night.